Stand on the south bank of the Moskva River 1,000 years ago and look north. There is no Kremlin skyline, no red walls, no golden domes, no St. Basil's Cathedral, no red square, no capital. Across the water, Borovitsky Hill rises above forest, meadow, and muddy tracks. A small Slavic settlement sits near the river. Wooden boats move with the current. Smoke lifts from timber houses. Beyond them, almost everything is trees. It does not look like the center of a state. It barely looks like a city. But keep watching this hill. A wooden fortress will rise here. Then Mongol horsemen will burn it. Moscow will rebuild. It will burn again. White stone walls will replace timber. An army from the Golden Horde will break through them. Moscow will rebuild again. Italian architects will arrive and turn the fortress into the red brick Kremlin we recognize. A ruler called Ivan the Terrible will transform a growing principality into a tsardom. Crimean forces will set the city on fire. Foreign troops will occupy the Kremlin. A new dynasty will take power. Then, Peter the Great will move Russia's capital away from Moscow, and for 2 centuries, this city will watch political power shift north. But Moscow will refuse to become irrelevant. Napoleon will enter it in 1812 and find a city already beginning to burn. The French will leave. Moscow will rebuild again. Railways, factories, and crowds will turn the old city into an industrial giant. Revolution will return the capital to Moscow. Churches will vanish. A subway will open beneath streets being widened for a new Soviet metropolis. Then, in 1941, German armies will come close enough that troops parade beside the Kremlin and march toward the front. The city will survive. The Soviet Union will not. And today, the same hill remains the seat of Russian power. 1,000 years of fire, invasion, and ambition will pass across in one view. This is the evolution of Moscow. The south bank of the Moskva River, looking north toward Borovitsky Hill. The river remains in the foreground. The hill remains beyond it. Cathedral domes will rise behind it. Bridges will cross the river. Palaces will replace wooden chambers, and the city will spread outward until the small settlement disappears inside one of Europe's largest urban regions. The Kremlin occupies Borovitsky Hill on the left bank of the Moskva River. Around the turn of the 11th and 12th centuries, a Slavic settlement develops on Borovitsky Hill, where the Moskva and Neglennaya rivers meet. But there is nothing inevitable about Moscow's future. Other Rus cities are older, richer, and more important. Kiev dominates political memory. Novgorod controls major trade. Vladimir and Suzdal matter more in the northeast. Moscow is simply one settlement among many. What makes this beginning deceptive is how ordinary it looks. Nothing here announces a future capital. No monument predicts empire. Then, in 1147, its name enters the written record. Prince Yuri Dolgoruki invites an ally to meet him in Moscow. That brief mention becomes the traditional birthday of the city. 9 years later, chronicles associate Yuri with a wooden fortress on the hill. Now our skyline changes for the first time. Earthworks rise. Timber walls follow. Inside them stand wooden houses, storehouses, and a small princely compound. Moscow has become a fortified place. It will need those walls sooner than anyone expects. Winter. 1, 2, 3, 8. The armies of Batu Khan sweep through northeastern Rus. Cities fall. Moscow is attacked, burned, and devastated. The wooden fortress becomes smoke. Roofs collapse. Flames move through timber streets. The river reflects orange fire beneath a winter sky. For many cities, destruction on this scale can end the story. For Moscow, it becomes a pattern. Burn, rebuild, grow stronger. And over the following century, Moscow's princes become increasingly skilled at a different kind of survival. Not simply defeating stronger neighbors, using them. Moscow's rulers operate within the political system of the Golden Horde, compete with rival Rus princes, collect tribute, and gradually expand their territory. By the early 14th century, Moscow is no longer a forgotten frontier town. It is becoming a center of power. Under Ivan I, known as Ivan Kalita, Moscow's political importance grows sharply. The seat of the Orthodox Metropolitan becomes established in Moscow, strengthening the city's religious prestige. Yet almost everything is still vulnerable to the thing Moscow fears most: fire. Timber is everywhere. Houses, walls, roofs, workshops. A spark can destroy an entire neighborhood. So when Moscow's power increases, its rulers eventually make a decision that changes the color of the city: stone. Under Prince Dmitry, later called Dmitry Donskoy, the Kremlin is rebuilt with white stone walls in 1367 and 1368. For the first time, our hill looks permanent. The new fortress is larger and stronger. Its walls help withstand Lithuanian attacks. Moscow begins acquiring a new identity: the White Stone City. Then, in 1380, Dmitry's forces fight the Golden Horde commander Mamai at Kulikovo. The battle becomes enormously important in later Russian memory. But victory does not mean Mongol power has disappeared. 2 years later, Khan Tokhtamysh reaches Moscow. In 1382, the city is captured and sacked. Again, smoke covers the hill. Again, people die. Again, Moscow rebuilds. The lesson is brutal. Walls can slow history. They cannot stop it. During the 15th century, Moscow's princes absorb or dominate neighboring territories. The city becomes the center of an expanding state. Then Ivan III takes power. His ambitions are larger than the old fortress. He wants architecture capable of expressing a new political reality. So specialists arrive from Italy. Beginning in 1485, the old white stone walls are replaced by massive red brick fortifications. Tower after tower rises. Inside the Kremlin, new cathedrals and palaces appear. The Assumption Cathedral is rebuilt by the Italian architect Aristotle Fioravanti. Moscow is no longer borrowing power from its position among rival principalities. It is presenting itself as the center of a unified realm. The fortress has become architecture as political language, and the language says, "Power lives here." In 1547, Ivan IV is crowned Tsar. Later generations will remember him as Ivan the Terrible. His reign expands the state dramatically. Kazan falls, Astrakhan falls. The Volga corridor comes under Moscow's control. On the edge of Red Square, a spectacular new cathedral rises to commemorate the conquest of Kazan. Today, we call it St. Basil's Cathedral. But Ivan's Moscow is not simply a story of expansion. The city itself suffers terrible fires. In 1547, major conflagrations devastate Moscow. Then, in 1571, Crimean Khan Devlet Girai attacks. Fire sweeps through much of the city outside the Kremlin. From our riverbank, the scene resembles the catastrophe of 1238 all over again. Centuries have passed, the walls are stronger, the state is larger. But Moscow can still become a city of smoke in a single day. After the ruling dynasty collapses at the end of the 16th century, Russia enters a period of famine, political chaos, rebellion, and foreign intervention known as the Time of Troubles. Claimants fight for the throne. Armies cross the country. Polish-Lithuanian forces enter Moscow and occupy the Kremlin. This is one of the strangest moments in the city's history. The fortress that symbolizes Russian power is controlled by foreign troops. But resistance gathers outside the capital. In 1612, a volunteer army associated with Kuzma Minin and Prince Dmitry Pozharsky helps drive the occupying forces from Moscow. The following year, Michael Romanov is elected Tsar. A new dynasty begins. The Kremlin remains. The family ruling from it changes. 17th century Moscow grows outward in rings. Markets become busier, craft districts spread, church domes multiply. Stone construction increases, although wooden buildings still dominate huge areas. The Kremlin towers gain their high decorative roofs, making the fortress look less like the severe medieval citadel Ivan III knew, and more like the silhouette familiar today. In the early 18th century, St. Petersburg becomes the seat of government. Moscow loses its status as capital, but it does not lose its symbolic power. Tsars continue to be crowned here. The Kremlin remains a national shrine, and Moscow becomes something unusual, an old capital living in the shadow of a new one. Then comes the event that makes fire part of Moscow's global legend. 1812. Napoleon invades the Russian Empire. After the Battle of Borodino, Russian forces withdraw from Moscow. French troops enter the city in September. Napoleon reaches the Kremlin. But instead of receiving the political surrender he expects, he occupies an increasingly empty city. Then, fires begin. Flames spread through Moscow. Wind drives them across neighborhood after neighborhood. Thousands of buildings are destroyed. The exact causes of different fires remain debated, but the result is not. Napoleon has captured Moscow. And Moscow is becoming useless around him. There is too little food, shelter is disappearing, Russian forces remain intact. Winter approaches. Napoleon eventually orders the retreat. Before leaving, French forces attempt to damage parts of the Kremlin. Some structures are destroyed or damaged, but the fortress survives. Once again, Moscow has been invaded. Once again, fire has consumed it. Once again, the city will use destruction as an opportunity to rebuild. After 1812, reconstruction changes Moscow. By the late 19th century, Moscow is no longer simply an old ceremonial city. It is a major industrial and commercial center. Horse-drawn traffic gives way to electric trams. Railway stations bring thousands into the city. Large apartment blocks and commercial buildings appear. The old Kremlin remains at the center, but the city around it is entering the modern age. Then the empire itself begins to fail. In 1917, revolution destroys imperial rule. Moscow sees armed fighting during the struggle for control. The Kremlin itself is damaged by artillery. In March 1918, the Bolshevik government moves from Petrograd to Moscow. After more than 2 centuries, Moscow is the capital again. But it is now the capital of a revolutionary state. The Kremlin becomes a working center of Soviet power. Imperial monuments disappear. Religious institutions are closed or demolished. In 1929, historic monasteries inside the Kremlin are destroyed to make way for new government use. The fortress survives another regime change, but the world inside its walls is transformed. During the 1930s, Soviet leaders attempt to remake Moscow on a monumental scale. Roads are widened, buildings are demolished or moved. New government architecture is planned. The Cathedral of Christ the Savior is demolished in 1931 for a gigantic palace of the Soviets that will never be completed. Then the city goes underground. In 1935, Moscow's first metro line opens. Its stations are not designed merely as transport infrastructure. Marble, columns, sculpture, and lighting transform them into monumental public spaces. Above ground, the Kremlin towers change too. Imperial double-headed eagles are removed from major towers and replaced by Soviet stars. The skyline now serves another ideology. And only a few years later, the city faces its greatest military danger since Napoleon. Autumn 1941. Nazi Germany advances toward Moscow. The front moves frighteningly close. Government offices prepare for evacuation. Defensive positions surround the city. Factories shift to wartime production. Air raids threaten the capital. The Kremlin is camouflaged to make it harder to identify from the air. Then comes November 7th. A military parade crosses Red Square. Troops and vehicles pass beside the Kremlin while the battle is still raging outside Moscow. Some units move from the parade toward the front. It is theater, propaganda, and genuine wartime mobilization at the same moment. German forces never capture Moscow. In December, Soviet counterattacks push them back. For the city, survival becomes another chapter in the same thousand-year pattern. An enemy approaches, the Kremlin remains. After the war, Moscow expands on an enormous scale. Moscow becomes the political center of a superpower. From the Kremlin, decisions affect Eastern Europe, Central Asia, the nuclear balance, and conflicts far beyond Russia. Yet by the 1980s, the system controlling that power is weakening. And in 1991, another state disappears without an invading army entering Moscow. August 1991. Tanks appear in Moscow during an attempted coup against Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. Crowds gather. The coup fails. Months later, the Soviet Union ceases to exist. The red Soviet flag is lowered over the Kremlin. The Russian tricolor becomes the flag of the new Russian Federation. The walls do not move. The state behind them changes. Since 1991, the Kremlin has served as the official residence of the President of the Russian Federation. Church services return to old Kremlin cathedrals. New commercial towers rise far beyond the historic center. Traffic replaces horse carts. Glass appears beside stone. But Borovitsky Hill still functions as the political heart of Moscow. Return to the riverbank. The year is 2026. The city across from us looks permanent. Red Kremlin walls, golden domes, bridges, traffic, government buildings, a metropolis stretching far beyond the horizon. The wooden fortress burned. The rebuilt city burned. White walls gave way to red brick. Dynasties disappeared. Foreign armies entered. The capital moved away, then returned. An empire became a Soviet state. The Soviet state became the Russian Federation. And through each transformation, power returned to the same hill. Power keeps returning to this same hill. Again, the hill endures. Our camera watched a small riverside settlement become a fortress. It watched Mongol forces burn it. It watched Moscow rebuild. It watched princes turn survival into expansion. It watched white stone replace timber. It watched Tokhtamysh capture the city. It watched Ivan III replace medieval walls with the red brick Kremlin. It watched Ivan the Terrible expand the state while Moscow burned again. It watched foreign troops occupy the Kremlin during the time of troubles. It watched the Romanovs begin a new dynasty. It watched Peter the Great move the capital away. It watched Napoleon take Moscow, but fail to make the victory useful. It watched fire destroy thousands of buildings. It watched railways and factories turn Moscow into an industrial giant. It watched revolution bring political power back to the Kremlin. It watched churches disappear and Soviet stars rise above the towers. It watched the metro open beneath a city being rebuilt for a new ideology. It watched German armies approach in 1941 and retreat without taking the capital. It watched Moscow become the center of a superpower. Then it watched that superpower vanish. Through all of this, Moscow never survived because it remained unchanged. It survived because it repeatedly rebuilt itself around the same center. Fire was supposed to destroy it. Fire created opportunities to remake it. Invasion was supposed to end its power. Invasion became part of its political mythology. Losing capital status was supposed to reduce Moscow. 2 centuries later, power returned. Look at the Kremlin one final time. Those walls seem ancient enough to belong to every version of Moscow. They do not. The red brick fortress is only one layer. Beneath it is the memory of white stone. Before white stone came timber. Before timber came a settlement on a wooded hill. And before anyone called the place Moscow, the river was already flowing past it. That is what 1,000 years reveal. Cities are not permanent objects. They are repeated decisions to rebuild after the version before them fails. Moscow has been burned, invaded, abandoned as a capital, restored as a capital, revolutionized and reinvented. Yet power keeps returning to Borovitsky Hill. One river, one fortress, 1,000 years, and countless versions of Moscow. Subscribe for more fixed camera journeys through the rise, destruction, and reinvention of the world's greatest cities. And tell us in the comments, which city should we watch evolve next?